I'm Maya Evans, 29 years, and I spent most of my life quietly working to earn one thing: my family's love. As a graphic designer in Chicago, I built a career from scratch, poured my heart into my work, even designed every detail of my sister's lavish wedding. But on the day of the ceremony, dressed in emerald green and holding my emergency kit like a badge of hope, I was stopped at the door. "You're not on the list," the staff said. That's when my mother looked me in the eyes and said words I'll never forget. "Did you really think you were invited?" What followed shattered everything I believed about love, family, and self-worth. But it also set me free. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever stood in front of someone who made you feel small. My story might be the one you need to hear today. Growing up in a middle-class suburb just outside Chicago. Our house wasn't anything fancy, but my father, David, always said it was in a good school district, the most important investment he could make for his daughters. Dad worked tirelessly as an accountant, the steady anchor of our family. My mother, Evelyn, was a part-time real estate agent, though she mostly considered herself a homemaker. Her true passion seemingly focused on maintaining a certain social facade. Then there was Chloe, my older sister, by 3 years. And for as long as I can remember, she was my mother's sun, moon, and stars. The clear favorite. When I was little, I didn't recognize the blatant favoritism for what it was. I concocted innocent explanations. Chloe received more attention because she was older, or because she simply needed more help. Chloe was pretty, popular, and effortlessly charming, but she struggled academically. Meanwhile, I was the quieter one, the studious one, the one who found refuge and solace in the vibrant worlds held within books and the blank canvas of my sketchbook. My father, David, he saw me. He truly did. Those moments with him at the dining room table, while I drew or painted, were precious islands of validation in a household where I often felt like a ghost. He would tell me how talented I was, his voice warm with genuine pride. Those were the breaths of air I needed to survive. He was my safe harbor. Everything changed when I was 15. The world tilted on its axis, and the light in our home dimmed irrevocably. Dad came home from work one evening, complaining of heartburn. He went to lie down, just for a moment, he said. He never got up again. A massive heart attack, sudden and devastating. I remember standing at his funeral, a blur of hushed voices and black clothes, feeling the devastating emptiness where his hand should have been. My mother's arm was draped protectively around Chloe's shoulders, a visible cocoon of grief and comfort. I stood slightly apart, clutching my father's favorite tie, the one my mother had let me keep, feeling utterly alone in my sorrow, a quiet observer of their public grief. Even then, the subtle division was palpable. After Dad died, the subtle favoritism didn't just become pronounced, it became a chasm. My mother threw herself into Chloe's life with an almost frantic energy. Every social event, every shopping trip, every grand plan for Chloe's future, Mom was there, front and center. I, on the other hand, was expected to be self-sufficient. "You've always been so independent, Maya," Mom would say, her words hollow, not a compliment, but a clear justification for her emotional neglect. It was a subtle weapon, designed to make me believe my need for connection was a flaw, not a fundamental human desire. Despite the gaping lack of emotional support at home, I clung to my academic pursuits like a lifeline. I thrived. In my junior year, I poured my soul into a portrait series, a visual diary of my grief and longing. My art teacher, Ms. Anya Sharma, secretly entered it into a prestigious regional art competition. When I won, the local newspaper did a feature on me. My artwork splashed across the culture section. My mother, true to form, displayed the article on the refrigerator. But even then, she found ways to diminish the achievement, to shrink it down to something manageable, something less threatening. "It's nice that you have your little drawings to keep you busy," she'd remark, her tone saccharine. Or, even worse, Chloe could have been artistic too if she'd had the time, but she's always been so popular. Chloe's jealousy, a simmering undercurrent, became impossible to ignore during my senior year, when I received a full scholarship to attend the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. What should have been a celebrated achievement, a moment of unadulterated joy, became a source of palpable tension. "I guess some people get all the luck," Chloe commented during the family dinner where I announced my acceptance, her voice dripping with resentment. Mom, ever the loyal ally, quickly added, "Well, we all know college isn't for everyone. Chloe has real-world skills." Real-world skills, as if my academic prowess, my artistic talent, was some impractical indulgence. I moved out to attend college in Chicago, and the physical distance provided an unexpected, profound emotional relief. I excelled in graphic design, finding my voice in the structured chaos of creative problem-solving. By my sophomore year, I was already freelancing, building a portfolio and a client base. After graduation, I landed a job at a boutique design agency in downtown Chicago, which allowed me to afford a small apartment of my own, a sanctuary where I could finally breathe. I established a life fiercely independent from my family, a life I built brick by brick, piece by piece. Yet despite everything, I still made efforts to stay connected. Every Sunday, a ritual I clung to, I would call Mom. Every holiday, I would show up with thoughtful, carefully chosen gifts, enduring the subtle comparisons and criticisms that were as predictable as the changing seasons. "Chloe's boyfriend drives a BMW," Mom would say, casually, a pointed dart thrown my way. Or "Chloe is thinking about buying a house in the suburbs." There was always an implicit comparison, a silent measuring stick that inevitably left me feeling inadequate, like I was forever falling short of an invisible standard. Then, when I was 27, I received a significant promotion at work, a career milestone I had worked tirelessly for. I called Mom, bursting with pride, eager to share the news, to finally earn a sliver of genuine enthusiasm. Her first response, "That's nice, honey, but Chloe just got engaged." The words hit me like a splash of cold water. "Ben proposed last night with the most beautiful ring." The conversation immediately shifted, not to my achievement, but to wedding plans, to how Mom would help plan the social event of the season. Ben came from a wealthy, old-money Chicago family, and my mother, Evelyn Evans, saw Chloe's marriage not just as a union of love, but as her golden ticket to the upper-class social circles she'd been selling houses to for years. Evelyn Evans, mother of the bride, she'd practically purr, savoring the sound of the words. Finally getting access to the upper-class social circles she'd been selling houses to for years. I was happy for Chloe, truly. Despite our complicated, often strained relationship, I genuinely wanted her to be happy, but I couldn't help feeling that once again, my achievements, my entire existence, was being overshadowed, minimized, pushed aside. I tried to participate in their effervescent excitement. "What can I do to help?" I offered. During a family dinner shortly after the engagement, hoping foolishly that this might be a bridge, a way to repair the gaping cracks in our relationship. "You're a designer, right?" Chloe said, as if she'd suddenly remembered what I did for a living, as if my entire career was a trivial side hobby. "Maybe you could help with the invitations and stuff." "That would save us some money," I agreed, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, creating something beautiful for Chloe's special day would finally earn me the approval and inclusion I'd been seeking from my family for so long. I was willing to try one more time to be the sister and daughter they wanted me to be someone they valued, not just tolerated. Chloe and Ben's engagement lasted a meticulous 14 months, during which wedding planning consumed my mother and sister entirely. The venue was the Grandview Manor, an exclusive country club on the North Shore where Ben's parents were esteemed members. The guest list swelled to over 200 people, many of whom Chloe had never met, but were important business associates of Ben's father or crucial social connections my mother was desperate to impress. True to my word, I offered my professional skills, my actual marketable talents, to help with the wedding materials. I could design custom invitations, I suggested during one of the early planning sessions at my mother's house. "It would be my gift to you both." Chloe exchanged a look with our mother, a silent communication that I felt like I was always on the outside of. Then she responded, "That would be helpful, but we need them to be really elegant, like professional quality." I swallowed, the familiar bitter taste of pride. "I am a professional, Chloe," I stated, trying to keep my voice even. "I design materials for luxury brands at my agency." "Oh, right," she said, looking slightly embarrassed. "Well, if you think you can handle it, That would be great. If I think I can handle it. The dismissal stung, but I pushed it down. Over the next several weeks, I poured countless hours into creating custom invitation designs. It was a desperate, silent plea for validation. 3 months before the wedding, I was browsing the wedding website I had created. Yes, I designed that too. When I noticed something odd. Under the family section, Chloe was listed with my mother and Ben's family. My name was nowhere to be found. I told myself it must be an oversight, a simple clerical error. The next day, I casually mentioned it to Chloe over the phone. "Hey, I noticed my name isn't on the family section of the website." "Oh, weird," she said, sounding distracted, her attention clearly elsewhere. "I'll fix that." "Probably just an oversight when we were giving the information to me weeks ago," I reasoned. Weeks passed. Despite sending updated information for various aspects of the website, my name remained stubbornly absent from the family section. Meanwhile, I still hadn't received an actual invitation. I assumed I wouldn't need one, of course, since I was so intimately involved in creating them. But as the RSVPs started coming in, a tiny, insistent knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. "Mom," I said during a call in which she was excitedly telling me about Chloe's final dress fitting, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "I never actually received my invitation. I know it sounds silly since I designed them, but I'd really like to have one as a keepsake." There was a pause on the line, a beat too long. "Oh," she finally said, her tone a little too casual. "Chloe is handling the guest list. I'm sure she just assumed you knew you were invited since you're helping so much." That explanation made a superficial kind of sense, so I let it go. But when I mentioned it to Chloe, she was equally vague. "You don't need an invitation, Maya. Your family, technically." The word technically stung, a sharp, cold jab. But I pushed the feeling aside. I was determined to be supportive, to be the good sister, and not to create any drama before the wedding. Perhaps this was just wedding stress, making them both act strangely, making me overly sensitive. 6 weeks before the wedding, the anxiety became a full-blown dread. I spent an entire weekend designing and printing the seating charts and place cards, meticulously arranging them based on the information Chloe had provided. When I finished, painstakingly reviewing everything one last time, a cold wave of realization washed over me. My name wasn't on any of the tables. I double-checked all the family tables, thinking there must be a mistake, a forgotten name card. But I wasn't listed anywhere. Not at the bridal party table, not at a family table, not even at a table for distant relatives. I called Chloe immediately, my voice tight. "I don't see my name on any of the seating arrangements." "Oh," she said, sounding distinctly uncomfortable. "Well, you'll be busy helping coordinate things, right? I figured you wouldn't have time to sit and eat." My jaw dropped. "Chloe, I'm not the wedding coordinator. You have Olivia for that. I've just been helping with the design elements." Her voice was dismissive. "Right. Well, I'll figure something out. Maybe you can sit with some of my college friends or something." Or something. Despite these glaring warning signs, despite the growing pit in my stomach, I continued to pour my heart, my time, and even money I couldn't really afford into helping prepare for the wedding. I found a beautiful emerald green dress that complemented the wedding colors without matching the bridesmaids, hoping to subtly blend into the celebratory canvas. I searched for the perfect wedding gift, eventually finding a vintage silver frame that I had custom engraved with their names and wedding date. Planning to add a wedding photo later, I truly wanted to give them something meaningful, something that would last. The night before the wedding, sleep was an impossible luxury. My mind raced. I was excited for my sister, yes, but also increasingly anxious about my place in this monumental event, and, by extension, my place in my family. I tried on my dress one last time, a futile attempt to control something, anything. I did a practice run of my hair and makeup, and carefully packed everything I would need for the next day. A small emergency kit, extra copies of programs, super glue for any last-minute fixes. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted, finally, to be enough. The morning of the wedding, I woke early and made myself a strong cup of coffee. The bitter warmth a small comfort against the gnawing nerves. I texted Chloe a simple, "Good morning, big day. Love you, heart." Message, which received no response. I tried not to read too much into it. She was the bride, after all, and probably overwhelmed with preparations. As I drove the familiar route to the Grandview Manor, I allowed myself to hope. Foolishly, perhaps, I hoped that this day might mark a new beginning for our fractured family. Maybe seeing all my hard work come together, seeing the tangible beauty I had created for them, would help Mom and Chloe finally appreciate me. Maybe being an integral part of this important occasion would finally make me feel like I belonged. I had no idea that the day would instead mark an ending, the final, undeniable confirmation that in my family's eyes, I would always, always be an outsider. I arrived at the Grandview Manor 3 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The parking lot was already buzzing with activity. Florists unloading arrangements, catering staff setting up, photographers testing lighting. I gathered my bag containing the emergency kit I'd prepared, a small arsenal of solutions for any potential wedding day mishap, and headed inside. The grand entrance hall of the country club was breathtaking, with polished marble floors that reflected the sunlight streaming through massive windows, and a sweeping staircase that spiraled upwards in elegant curves. I approached a woman with a clipboard who appeared to be in charge, Olivia. "Hi, I'm Maya Evans, the bride's sister," I said, forcing a bright, confident tone. "I've been helping with all the design elements and wanted to check if there's anything that needs attention before things get started." Olivia looked at me with slight confusion, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Oh, you're the designer," she said, as if putting a face to a name she knew only from emails. "I thought you were just handling things remotely. Chloe didn't mention you'd be here for setup." "I'm her sister," I repeated, a tiny twinge of unease starting to prickle at the back of my neck. "Right," Olivia said, checking something on her clipboard, her attention already drifting. "Well, everything's under control with the printed materials. The mother of the bride is upstairs with the bridal party if you need to speak with them." Mother of the bride. Not my mother, though she was just the mother of the bride. As if I had no connection to her, no familial bond beyond that title. I made my way upstairs to the lavish suite, where Chloe and the bridesmaids were getting ready. Through the ornate door, I could hear laughter, the rhythmic beat of pop music, and the excited chatter of women. I knocked. A tentative tap, and the door was opened by one of Chloe's friends from college, a bubbly girl named Sarah whom I'd met a few times. "Oh," she said, clearly surprised to see me, her smile faltering for a split second. "Maya, right?" "Yes," I said, forcing a smile onto my face, the effort costing me more than it should have. "I just wanted to see if Chloe needs anything." Before she could respond, my mother, Evelyn, appeared at the door, her expression a careful mask of polite surprise, but her eyes held a hint of annoyance. "Maya, what are you doing here so early?" "I came to help," I said, trying to sound helpful, essential. "Make sure all the materials are set up correctly." Mom glanced over her shoulder, a quick, almost imperceptible flick of her eyes towards the activity within the room, then stepped into the hallway, partially closing the door behind her, creating a physical barrier between me and the celebration. "Everything's under control," she stated, her voice low, as if sharing a secret. "Chloe is very busy right now with her bridesmaids." "Can I just say hello?" I pleaded, a quiet desperation creeping into my voice. "I won't stay long." Mom sighed, a small put-upon sound. "She's very stressed, Maya. Today needs to be perfect. Maybe you can make yourself useful downstairs. Check on the table arrangements or something." I nodded, swallowing the bitter pill of hurt, the unspoken dismissal. "Sure, I'll do that." As I turned to leave, my back to the door, I heard Chloe's voice from inside the room, clear as a bell, cutting through the music and laughter. "Is she gone? I don't need any drama today." I pretended not to hear, my stomach churning. I walked away, telling myself desperately that pre-wedding nerves were making everyone act strangely, that it wasn't personal. It couldn't be. I headed to the reception hall, a vast, ornate ballroom, to check on the setup, a thinly veiled excuse to gather my composure. The ballroom was stunning, a testament to months of planning and expense. Round tables were elegantly set with fine china and sparkling crystal, ready for the feast, and everywhere, my designs. From the custom-printed programs placed on each ceremony chair outside, to the detailed menus at each place setting, the monogrammed cocktail napkins at the bar, and the grand illuminated seating chart display near the entrance, I felt a small, fleeting surge of pride seeing my work come to life so beautifully, a stark contrast to the emptiness I felt inside. As I was admiring the centerpieces, my eyes tracing the delicate floral patterns I had painstakingly hand-illustrated, I overheard two staff members talking nearby, their voices hushed but audible. The mother of the bride was very specific about the guest list, one said quietly. She said they've had to be careful about keeping certain people away from the important guests. Rich people drama, the other replied with a cynical laugh. I moved away, the knot in my stomach tightening, my heart hammering against my ribs. They couldn't possibly be referring to me, could they? I told myself it was just staff gossip, nothing more. The hours passed quickly, a blur of nervous anticipation. Guests began to arrive for the ceremony, a stream of well-dressed, excited faces. I slipped into the garden where chairs had been arranged, taking a seat in the back row, a quiet shadow. No one acknowledged me. No one asked why I wasn't with the family. No one even met my gaze. The ceremony itself was beautiful, a perfect tableau. Chloe looked radiant in her designer gown, a vision of bridal perfection as she walked down the aisle on my mother's arm. I noticed Mom crying happy tears, her face alight with a joy I had never, not once, seen her express for any of my achievements. Not for my art competition, not for my scholarship, not for my promotion. After the ceremony, guests were directed to a lavish cocktail hour on the terrace, while the wedding party took photos. I stood alone, watching from a distance as Chloe, Ben, my mother, and Ben's entire family posed for picture after picture, a beaming, perfect unit. No one, not a single person, called me over to join them. I was simply a spectator at my own family's most important celebration. And then came the moment for the reception. Guests began lining up at the grand entrance to the ballroom, where staff were checking names against the guest list. I joined the line, my heart pounding, rehearsing in my head how I would laugh off the obvious oversight when my turn came, how I would explain, oh so casually, that I was the bride's sister, the designer, the one who obviously belonged here. When my turn came, I smiled at the young man with the tablet. Maya Evans. He scrolled through his list, then scrolled again, his face a mask of increasing discomfort. I'm sorry, I don't see that name. And that's when the world began to unravel. The moments after my mother's chilling pronouncement, did you really think you were invited? Strangers aren't allowed, were a blur. I remember walking, each step sending shooting pain through my feet in those ridiculous, expensive green heels. My car was in the far corner of the sprawling parking lot, a tiny blue dot amidst a sea of luxury vehicles. Halfway there, my legs simply wouldn't carry me any further. The reality of what had just happened, the sheer brutal finality of it, hit me with crushing force. I spotted a small stone bench near a decorative fountain, its water cascading gently, providing a strange, soothing backdrop to my complete unraveling. I sank onto it, my composure finally beginning to crack. I didn't cry. Not yet. The shock was too profound, the pain too deep for tears. Instead, memories, sharp and painful, began flooding back, one after another, each one recontextualized, reframed in the brutal light of this ultimate rejection. My 16th birthday, Mom and Chloe had forgotten, going shopping together, leaving me a hastily scrawled note. My high school graduation party. I'd overheard Mom telling her friends with a sigh how Chloe had been the one to really struggle after Dad died. Her words erasing my own profound grief, my own silent struggle to keep our household afloat emotionally. College move-in day. Mom had dropped me off with a quick perfunctory hug, then rushed back, her mind already consumed with Chloe's sorority rush event, as if my major life transition was a mere inconvenience. Every holiday, my carefully chosen gifts opened with polite acknowledgement, a cursory glance. Chloe's gifts, however, were met with genuine excitement, exclamations, and immediate engagement. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern, a meticulously woven tapestry of exclusion, so consistent, so insidious, that I had normalized it. I had made excuses for it. I had, in my deepest, most vulnerable moments, blamed myself for it. But sitting on that cold stone bench, in my beautiful, now meaningless dress and painfully pinching shoes, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. I had never been wanted. Not truly. Not unconditionally. I was an afterthought, a convenient designer, a problem to be managed, My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling. I called the one person I knew would come without question, without judgment, without needing an explanation beyond my breaking voice. Sarah Miller, my roommate from college, and still my closest friend, my chosen sister. She lived about 30 minutes from the Grandview Manor, and I knew she'd been surprised when I'd told her, weeks ago, that I wasn't allowed to bring a +1 to the wedding. Now, her immediate concern poured through the phone. "What's wrong? You sound strange." My voice finally broke, shattering into a million pieces, mirroring my heart. "They didn't invite me," I choked out, the words raw, tearing from my chest. "I'm sitting outside. They wouldn't let me in." "What?" Her voice was incredulous. "That's impossible. You're the bride's sister." "Apparently that doesn't matter," I managed, the tears finally, violently erupting. "Can you come get me? I don't think I should drive right now." "I'm already putting on my shoes," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "Stay put." While waiting for Sarah, I sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement, any shift, might cause me to completely fall apart, to crumble into dust right there on the stone bench. A few late guests arrived, hurrying past, casting curious glances my way. I wondered what they saw. A woman in formal attire, sitting alone by a fountain, staring into space. Did I look as hollowed out as I felt? When Sarah's familiar blue Honda pulled up 28 minutes later, I rose mechanically, my limbs stiff and uncooperative, and walked towards it. She jumped out, her face a mask of concern, and met me halfway, pulling me into a fierce, protective hug. "Those absolute monsters," she whispered into my hair, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I never liked your mother, but this is a new low, even for her." In the blessed safety of Sarah's car, the tears finally came. They weren't delicate, dignified tears. They were ugly, violent sobs that seemed to tear themselves from my very chest, ripping through me. Sarah, ever practical, handed me a box of tissues and drove in silence, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand, a silent anchor in the storm. "I designed everything," I choked out between sobs, hiccuping, my voice thick with snot and grief. "The invitations, the programs, the place cards, everything. They're using in there has my work on it, but I wasn't good enough to attend." Sarah's response was firm, cutting through my self-doubt like a sharp knife. "This isn't about you not being good enough, Maya," she said, her eyes blazing with conviction. "This is about them being terrible people. You hear me? Terrible people." We arrived at Sarah's apartment, her sanctuary, and she helped me inside. In her spare bedroom, I changed out of my emerald green dress, carefully hanging it up, knowing with a sickening certainty that I'd never wear it again. Sarah tossed me a pair of soft sweatpants and a comfortable t-shirt, then made 2 mugs of chamomile tea while I washed the streaky, tear-stained makeup from my face. "Check your phone," she called from the kitchen, her voice soft now, knowing. "I bet people are wondering where you are." I hadn't looked at my phone since calling Sarah. Now I saw several notifications, a torrent of digital reminders of the world that was moving on without me. There were new posts on Chloe's wedding hashtag, photos of the ceremony, the first dance, the cake cutting. My designs were visible in many of the shots, gleaming in the background, a silent testament to my labor, but I was nowhere to be seen. Then there were the text messages, not from my mother or Chloe, predictably, but from distant relatives, people who hadn't been privy to the subtle, ongoing erasure. "Great seeing everyone except you today. Missed you at the wedding. Where were you hiding during the reception? Wanted to say hello. Didn't see you at Chloe's wedding. Everything okay?" And then, a message from my mother. Her name, Evelyn Evans, flashed on the screen, a harbinger of more pain. "Your behavior was completely unacceptable. You've embarrassed the entire family. We'll discuss this after the honeymoon." My behavior, as if I had done something wrong by simply existing, by expecting to be treated like a member of the family, by reacting to their cruelty. "What does it say?" Sarah asked, returning with the 2 mugs of tea, her eyes empathetic. I showed her my mother's message, and her face hardened, a mask of protective anger. "Block her," she said, her voice decisive. "Block both of them, at least for now. I can't just—" I started. The lifelong conditioning to seek their approval, to maintain contact, rearing its ugly head. "You can." You should, Sarah interrupted gently but firmly. They don't get to hurt you like this and then dictate the terms of your response. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over the block button. My entire life had been spent trying to earn love and acceptance from my family, trying to be good enough. Could I really cut them off so easily? They already cut you off, Maya, Sarah said gently, as if reading my thoughts, as if sensing the profound internal struggle. You're just acknowledging what they've already done. With a shaky breath, I blocked them both. Then, with a defiant click, I turned off my phone entirely. The silence that followed felt both terrifying and liberating, a vast echoing void where their constant judgments and subtle slights once resided. That night, curled up in Sarah's guest bed, the tears exhausted, I experienced waves of emotions: grief, hot, burning rage, profound humiliation, and occasionally, brief, fleeting moments of numb relief. It was as if a crushing weight I'd been carrying for years had been violently torn away, leaving me both lighter and profoundly unbalanced. Who am I? I whispered into the darkness of Sarah's guest room, the question hanging heavy in the air. If I'm not the person desperately trying to be good enough for Evelyn and Chloe Evans? I didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time, in the painful wreckage of my world, I was ready to find out. The week following the wedding was arguably the lowest point of my adult life. I called in sick to work on Monday, utterly unable to face explaining what had happened to my colleagues, unable to put words to the raw, festering wound that was my heart. One day bled into 5, an endless gray continuum. I remained in Sarah's guest room, alternating between sleeping for 12 hours straight, a desperate escape, and lying wide awake at 3 in the morning, replaying every family interaction I could remember, searching for signs I should have recognized earlier, for clues to their cruelty. Sarah, a silent, unwavering pillar of support, brought me food that I barely touched, and sat with me in silence when I couldn't speak, her presence a comforting balm. She handled the practical matters too, driving to my apartment to get clothes and my laptop, calling my boss to explain I had a family emergency, a phrase that now seemed bitterly ironic, and screening calls from concerned friends. On Wednesday, feeling a desperate need for some connection, I tentatively turned my phone back on. It was immediately flooded with notifications, more messages from relatives, a few concerned texts from coworkers, and multiple missed calls from my mother. There was, as expected, nothing from Chloe. I listened to one voicemail from my mother, her voice crisp, demanding. Maya, this childish behavior needs to stop. You're making a scene over nothing. Call me back immediately. Over nothing. Being publicly rejected and humiliated by my only family was nothing to her. The sheer audacity of it left me numb. I deleted the message and all the others without listening to them. Then I opened social media, immediately regretting it when I saw my feed dominated by wedding photos. In one image, my mother stood between Chloe and Ben, beaming with pride, a picture of perfect domestic bliss. The caption, a dagger to my heart, read, "Our perfect little family, on this special day." Our perfect little family, a family that very explicitly did not include me. I closed the apps and put my phone away, sinking further into the quicksand of depression. The question that kept circling in my mind, a relentless, torturous loop, was, what had I done to deserve this? What fatal flaw did I possess that made me so unlovable to the people who should have loved me most? By Friday, Sarah had had enough of watching me spiral. She marched into the guest room, a woman on a mission, opened the blinds with a decisive snap, letting in a brutal flood of sunlight, and sat on the edge of the bed. Get up, she said, her voice kind but firm. Shower, get dressed. We're going out. I can't, I mumbled, pulling the blanket over my head, seeking refuge in the darkness. She yanked it back down. You can, and you will. You're going to see a therapist today. I called Dr. Eleanor Vance. She had a cancellation and can see you at 2. A therapist? Sarah, I don't need— Yes, you do, she interrupted, her eyes blazing with fierce affection. This isn't normal sadness, Maya. This is trauma. You need professional help, not just me bringing you soup and letting you hide from the world. I wanted to argue, to push back, but I didn't have the energy, and deep down, in a corner of my broken heart, I knew she was right. This pain went beyond ordinary family disagreements or disappointments. This was about a lifetime of conditional love, of systematic exclusion, that had culminated in the most public, most brutal rejection possible. Dr. Eleanor Vance's office was warm and surprisingly non-clinical, a welcome contrast to the cold sterility I might have imagined. Comfortable chairs invited you to sink in, and soft lighting cast a gentle glow on the walls, adorned with calming abstract art. Dr. Vance herself was a woman in her 50s, with kind, knowing eyes and a direct, no-nonsense manner that, surprisingly, put me at ease. "Tell me why you're here, Maya," she said after our initial introductions, her voice calm and steady. I took a deep breath, and the story, a lifetime of suppressed hurt and confusion, poured out of me. Not just about the wedding, but about the years of subtle favoritism, the constant, exhausting seeking of approval, the way I had built my entire identity around trying to be good enough for people who would never, ever see me that way. "What you're describing sounds like a family dynamic with narcissistic patterns," Dr. Vance said calmly when I finished, her words cutting through the fog of my self-blame. "Your mother appears to have cast Chloe in the role of the golden child, and you as the scapegoat. These aren't conscious choices on her part, Maya, but deep-seated patterns that likely stem from her own upbringing and psychological needs. It's a survival mechanism, a way she learned to cope with her own unresolved issues." "So it's not that I did something wrong?" I asked, the question barely a whisper, embarrassed by how small my voice sounded, how much a part of me still clung to the notion that this was my fault. "No, Maya," Dr. Vance said unequivocally, her gaze compassionate. "Children don't earn or deserve mistreatment. You were placed in this role for reasons that have everything to do with your mother's limitations and nothing to do with your worth." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, hot and cleansing. "Then why does it hurt so much?" I choked out, grappling with the disconnect between intellectual understanding and raw emotional pain. If I know intellectually that it's not my fault, why do I still feel like there must be something fundamentally wrong with me? "Because you've internalized these messages since childhood," she explained patiently. "Your brain formed during these experiences, learning that love was conditional, that you were somehow less deserving than your sister. Unlearning those beliefs is possible, Maya, but it takes time and work. It takes grieving the family you wished you had and embracing the truth of the family you got." Over the next 2 weeks, I continued seeing Dr. Vance twice weekly. The intensity of my emotions slowly began to recede, replaced by a dull ache, a profound emptiness that was, paradoxically, less painful than the sharp, agonizing pangs of betrayal. I returned to my own apartment, the quiet space a comfort now, but still spent most evenings with Sarah or on video calls with other friends who lived further away, seeking out genuine connection. I went back to work, throwing myself into projects that had nothing to do with weddings or family celebrations, finding a strange, almost meditative release in the precision of design. During a particularly difficult therapy session, Dr. Vance suggested something unexpected. "I want you to look through old family photos, Maya," she instructed. "Not to reminisce, not to revisit the pain, but to observe the patterns with a new awareness, through the lens of what we've discussed." That night, I pulled out the dusty photo albums I'd taken when I moved out of my mother's house. It was a strange, almost clinical exercise. I realized there weren't many pictures of me alone, a testament to my invisibility. I was almost always in group shots, often standing slightly apart, or strikingly being held or physically close to my father rather than my mother. In one Christmas photo, taken when I was about 7, I was opening a present while Chloe, older and already self-possessed, watched. Even then, I could see it in my expression. The hopeful anxiety, the desperate, almost frantic desire for approval, for attention. I had been performing my whole life for an audience that had already decided not to applaud. Near the bottom of the box of photos, tucked away and almost forgotten, I found something precious. A letter. My father had written it to me when I won a school art contest in 5th grade. He'd been away on a business trip and couldn't attend the ceremony, but had left this note for me to open afterward. "My dearest Maya," it read. His familiar handwriting a bittersweet comfort. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be there today to see you receive your award. I know how hard you worked on your painting, and I couldn't be prouder of you. You have a special way of seeing the world that is entirely your own. Never lose that perspective, even when others don't understand it. Being different isn't a flaw, it's your greatest strength. All my love, Dad. I traced his handwriting with my finger, feeling a connection to him that transcended the years since his death. He had seen me, really seen me, and loved what he saw. That was a truth I could hold on to, a solid, unshakable foundation I could finally build upon. In my next session with Dr. Vance, I brought up my father's letter, my voice thick with emotion. He was the only one who ever really accepted me for who I was, I said, a wave of fresh grief washing over me. After he died, there was no one left in my family who did. But there are people in your life now who do, she pointed out gently, her gaze sweeping over my notes. Sarah, your other friends, me, and most importantly, Maya. You're learning to accept yourself. How do I do that? I asked, my voice small again. How do I stop measuring my worth by whether my mother and sister want me around? By their elusive, conditional approval? By recognizing that their assessment isn't accurate or fair, she replied, her voice firm with conviction. By understanding that their rejection says more about their limitations than about your value. And by building a life that isn't centered around winning approval you may never receive. It's about choosing yourself, Maya. I nodded slowly, the truth of her words resonating deep within me. I think I've been waiting my whole life for them to change, I confessed. The realization a painful, profound ache. To suddenly see me and love me the way I needed. But that's never going to happen, is it? I can't predict the future, Maya, Dr. Vance said carefully, acknowledging the faint flicker of hope I still held. People sometimes do grow and change, but you can't build your life around waiting for that possibility. You need to live for yourself now, for the Maya you are, not the Maya you were always trying to be for them. That night, a quiet determination settled over me. I researched family estrangement and toxic relationships online. I found and joined online forums where others shared similar, heartbreaking experiences. I wasn't alone in this pain, I realized, a wave of profound relief washing over me. So many people had faced the devastating recognition that their families of origin couldn't or wouldn't provide the love and acceptance they deserved. Reading their stories of grief, of slow, arduous healing, and eventually of building fulfilling, authentic lives, gave me hope. Many had created families of choice that provided the unconditional support and love their biological families hadn't. Others had established limited, carefully boundaried relationships with toxic relatives. Some had cut ties completely. There wasn't a single right answer, I realized, but what all these stories had in common was a moment of clarity, a pivotal point where the person stopped blaming themselves and recognized the dynamic for what it truly was. My wedding rejection had been my moment of clarity. As painful as it was, as devastating as it felt, it had torn away the veil of denial I'd been hiding behind for decades. I couldn't unsee the truth now. And while that brought a deep, profound grief for the loss of what might have been, it also brought possibility. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. And that meant I didn't need to fix myself to be worthy of love. I already was. 3 weeks after the wedding, a new energy began to hum beneath my skin. I was ready to take more active steps toward healing, to rebuild. Dr. Vance had helped me develop a simple but powerful self-care routine that included morning journaling, a non-negotiable hour of regular exercise, and short meditation sessions. These practices weren't magical solutions, not instant cures for years of neglect, but they provided structure, a sense of control, and small, precious moments of peace during a time when everything still felt chaotic and raw. I returned to work full-time, throwing myself into new projects, burying myself in the precision and beauty of design. My creative director, a sharp, observant woman named Jessica, noticed the subtle but profound change in my work. "There's something different about your designs lately, Maya," she commented during a review meeting, her head tilted, studying my latest portfolio. A new boldness, an emotional depth that wasn't quite there before. They're more authentic, more impactful. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. What I was doing was channeling my pain into my art, finding visual expressions for feelings I couldn't always put into words. Ironically, being rejected by my family was, in a strange, painful way, making me a better designer. It had stripped away the need to people-please, the desire for external validation, allowing my true artistic voice to emerge, unburdened. At Dr. Vance's suggestion, I drafted an email to my mother and Chloe, a difficult but necessary step. This email wasn't about seeking an apology or reconciliation. It was about setting clear boundaries for our future interactions, if any. I didn't send it immediately, letting it sit in my drafts folder for a full week, rereading it, tweaking phrases, ensuring every word was deliberate, firm, and rooted in my newfound strength. Meanwhile, the messages from my mother continued, an relentless barrage, growing increasingly manipulative. "Your sister is devastated that you're creating this drama during her honeymoon," one text read. A subtle twist of the knife, another even more galling. "I raised you better than this, Maya. This silent treatment is childish and cruel." I showed these messages to Dr. Vance during a session. "Notice how she's flipping the narrative," the therapist pointed out calmly, her voice devoid of judgment. "In her version, you're the one causing harm by reacting to their actions, not them harming you with the initial rejection." Classic Darvo Maya. Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The acronym which she had taught me clicked into place, a chillingly accurate description of my mother's behavior. "Exactly," Dr. Vance affirmed. "And how does reading these messages make you feel now?" I considered the question truly. A month ago, these messages would have sent me into a dizzying spiral of guilt and self-doubt, tearing myself apart. Now, I felt different. "I just feel sad," I admitted, a quiet, weary sadness. Sad that she can't take responsibility. Sad that this is the mother I got. "That's progress, Maya," Dr. Vance said, her voice filled with genuine approval. "Tremendous progress." After another week of reflection, of solidifying my resolve, I finalized my email. My hands trembled as I typed, but my mind was clear. "Mom and Chloe, I'm writing to address what happened at the wedding and to establish clear boundaries going forward. Being deliberately excluded from Chloe's wedding after contributing significant time, skill, and emotional energy to the preparations made it painfully clear how you both view me and my place in this family. I need time and space to process this hurt. During this period, I ask that you respect my need for distance. Please do not contact me for at least 3 months. After that time, if I choose to reestablish communication, it will be on different terms than before. I will no longer accept being treated as an afterthought or an inconvenience. I will no longer work to earn love that should be freely given. I deserve better, and I'm finally ready to insist on it. This isn't about punishment or drama. It's about self-preservation and setting healthy boundaries. I hope someday you can understand that. Maya." I sent the email on a quiet Sunday morning, my finger hovering over the send button. A moment of profound internal resistance, then a surge of defiant liberation. Then, with a deep breath, I turned off my phone and went for a long, meandering walk in Chicago's Millennium Park, the crisp autumn air a balm on my skin. When I returned, hours later, and tentatively checked my messages, there were multiple missed calls and texts from both my mother and Chloe, exactly what I'd expected. Chloe's text was brief, cutting, and predictably self-absorbed. "Way to make everything about you, as usual." My mother's was longer, a manipulative masterpiece that hit all the familiar notes: guilt, obligation, denial, and thinly veiled threats. "I don't know what fantasy you've concocted in your head, but this is completely uncalled for after everything I've done for you. This is how you repay me, by abandoning your family. Your sister is heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. If your father could see this behavior." I didn't respond to either message. Instead, with a calm I wouldn't have thought myself capable of, I blocked their numbers, at least temporarily. It was a boundary I needed to maintain for my own well-being, a fortress around my fragile, healing heart. The following weeks brought unexpected changes, a blossoming of new possibilities. Without the constant emotional drain of trying to please my family, to earn their elusive approval, I had more energy, more emotional space for other relationships and pursuits. I joined a local art collective in Wicker Park, a vibrant community of creatives. I started volunteering at a community center, teaching design skills to teenagers, finding deep satisfaction in mentoring young minds. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with, realizing how much I'd neglected those genuine connections in my desperate quest for familial acceptance. One rainy Tuesday, a dreary gray Chicago day, I stopped at a cozy coffee shop near my new apartment in the bustling Logan Square neighborhood to work on some freelance projects. While waiting in line, I dropped my sketchbook. A man behind me, with kind eyes and a warm smile, picked it up. As he handed it back, he glanced at the page it had fallen open to, a series of logo concepts I was developing for a new client. "These are really good," he said, his voice genuinely impressed. "Are you a designer?" His name was Liam Hayes, and he was a photographer who specialized in architectural and interior design photography. We ended up sharing a table, the small, round surface soon covered in our sketchbooks and cameras, talking for over an hour about creative processes, the frustrating challenges of clients, and our favorite designers. "Would you want to get coffee again sometime?" he asked as we were leaving, his eyes twinkling. "Or dinner? I'd love to see more of your work." It wasn't until I was walking home, the rain now a gentle drizzle, that it truly hit me. He might have been asking me out, not just expressing professional interest. The thought made me pause. Was I ready for that? After a moment's reflection, a quiet inner voice surprising me with its resolve, I decided it didn't matter if I was ready. I was willing to find out. Liam and I began seeing each other, sometimes for professional collaboration, sometimes for dates, often for both. He was thoughtful, observant, and wonderfully direct in a way that was profoundly refreshing after years of navigating my family's indirect communications, their hidden agendas, their unspoken expectations. When he said he'd call, he called. When he had a concern, he expressed it plainly, openly. When he enjoyed something about me, he said so, simply and sincerely. "I like how your mind works," he told me one evening as we walked along the Chicago Riverwalk, the city lights shimmering on the water. "You see connections that other people miss. You're insightful." These simple affirmations, delivered without hidden meaning or expectation, meant more to me than any compliment I'd ever received from my family. There was no performance required, no hoops to jump through. Liam liked me as I was, not as I pretended to be, not as I tried desperately to become for someone else. As my personal life blossomed, taking root in new, fertile ground, I also made a significant professional decision. I began looking for a new apartment in a different neighborhood, wanting a fresh start in a place that didn't hold memories of rushing to family dinners where I'd feel excluded, or returning home dejected after another disappointing interaction. I found a sunny one-bedroom in Logan Square, further from my downtown office, but nestled in a vibrant community with more artists and creative professionals. The move was both physically exhausting and emotionally liberating. Each item I packed represented a choice about what to bring into my new life and what to leave behind, symbolically and literally. In my new space, a blank canvas of possibility, I created a home office that doubled as a studio for personal creative projects, a space just for me. I painted the walls a soft sage green, a color that made me feel calm and grounded. I hung art by local artists I admired and friends whose work inspired me. Every decision I made, from the color of the paint to the type of coffee maker, was based solely on what I wanted, not what anyone else would think or judge. 3 months passed, then 4. The holiday season approached, traditionally a time when family obligations would have dominated my thoughts and schedule, a source of immense anxiety and pressure. My mother, predictably, emailed, completely ignoring the boundaries I'd set in my previous message. "Thanksgiving dinner will be at 3 p.m. Chloe and Ben will be there. I expect you to put this nonsense behind you and behave like an adult. Family is family." I drafted and redrafted my response several times, carefully choosing my words, ensuring they were polite but firm, without opening any door for negotiation or guilt. I finally settled on, "Thank you for the invitation, but I won't be attending Thanksgiving this year. I wish you a pleasant holiday." It was polite, but absolutely unyielding. No explanations, no apologies, no room for her usual manipulations. Instead of the traditional anxiety-inducing family Thanksgiving, I accepted Sarah's invitation to a Friendsgiving gathering. Liam came too, meeting my closest friends for the first time. We ate too much, played ridiculous board games until our sides hurt, and laughed until tears streamed down our faces. Not once did I feel I was performing or seeking approval. Not once did I feel less than or unwelcome. As the evening wound down, Sarah pulled me aside, her eyes warm and perceptive. "How are you really doing with everything, Maya?" she asked, her voice soft. I considered the question carefully, truly searching within myself for an honest answer. "I'm doing authentically," I finally said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Sometimes that means I'm sad or angry. Sometimes it means I'm happier than I ever remember being. But it's all real now. I'm not pretending anymore. She hugged me tightly. That's all any of us can ask for, Maya. The wedding rejection that had once felt like the end of my world had miraculously become the beginning of a new one. A world built on genuine connections, clear boundaries, and the radical, liberating notion that I was enough, exactly as I was. 1 year after Chloe's wedding, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark, desolate days following the rejection. My design business was thriving. The experience of navigating my own pain and finding my authentic voice had ironically made me a more intuitive, empathetic, and powerful designer. I had left the agency to start my own boutique studio, specializing in branding for small creative businesses, and my client list was growing. My relationship with Liam had deepened into something solid, nurturing, and incredibly supportive. My apartment had become a true home, filled with art, vibrant plants, and frequent joyful gatherings of friends, a constant hum of warmth and laughter. I still saw Dr. Vance monthly, our sessions now focusing less on crisis management and more on continued personal growth, and occasionally navigating any lingering family situations. The work we'd done together had helped me develop what she called an internal validation system, the ability to assess my own worth without relying on external approval, particularly from my family. This new, robust foundation was tested unexpectedly. 13 months after the wedding, Chloe called me out of the blue. I had maintained minimal contact with my family, exchanging brief civil emails around holidays and birthdays, carefully crafted, but nothing more. Seeing Chloe's name on my phone screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me, a ghost of old patterns, but it was milder, far more manageable than it would have been before. I answered with a simple, neutral, "Hello, Chloe." "Maya?" Her voice sounded strained, brittle, a far cry from the confident, poised bride I had last seen. I need to talk to you." "I'm listening," I said, keeping my tone neutral, careful not to inject any emotion, positive or negative, that might be misinterpreted. What followed was unexpected, a revelation that both surprised and saddened me. Chloe's perfect marriage was in trouble. Ben had been working constantly, consumed by his family's business, leaving her isolated and lonely in their expensive suburban house, a gilded cage. My mother had been relentlessly pressuring them about starting a family, adding immense tension to an already strained relationship. Chloe was miserable, her voice breaking, the facade cracking. "Mom just keeps saying I need to be more understanding about Ben's work hours," she said, her voice small. "That all successful men are busy. She says I should be grateful for the lifestyle he provides and stop complaining." I recognized the pattern immediately. Our mother, Evelyn, prioritizing status and appearances over genuine emotional needs. For the first time, Chloe was experiencing, acutely, what it felt like to have her feelings dismissed, to be told her pain was nothing. "That sounds really difficult," I said carefully, choosing my words with precision. "I'm sorry you're going through this. I thought about what you said in that email last year," Chloe continued, her voice hesitant, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard from her. "About not accepting being treated as an afterthought, about deserving better." She paused, a long silence stretching between us. I didn't get it then. Maybe I'm starting to now. It would have been easy, so incredibly easy, to respond with bitterness, with righteous satisfaction. Part of me, the still wounded human part, wanted to say, "How does it feel to be on the receiving end for once?" But that wouldn't help either of us move forward. It wouldn't serve my healing, and it wouldn't offer her any genuine path towards her own. Instead, I said with a quiet sincerity, "It's never too late to start recognizing your own worth, Chloe." We talked for nearly an hour, not as close sisters picking up where we left off, not as adversaries, but as two adults, cautiously, tentatively, building something new, something fragile. I listened more than I spoke, offering support without overcommitting, without offering solutions that weren't mine to give. When she asked if we could get coffee sometime, I agreed, but suggested a public cafe rather than either of our homes, maintaining a small, necessary boundary. After the call, I sat in my window seat, watching the autumn leaves swirl in the courtyard below, feeling strangely peaceful. Chloe's reaching out didn't erase the past harm, didn't miraculously heal decades of pain, but it suggested the possibility of a different future. Not the idealized, picture-perfect family reconciliation I once would have desperately wanted, but perhaps something more honest, and ultimately, something healthier. The coffee meeting with Chloe was awkward, a careful dance of conversation, but it was civil. We stuck to safe topics, mostly her work as an event coordinator, my new business, and neutral childhood memories involving our father, the one shared safe space. As we were leaving, she hesitantly mentioned Thanksgiving. "Mom's expecting everyone at her house as usual," she said, her eyes searching my face. "Would you consider coming? Ben and I would be there, and his parents." I had prepared for this question, an internal script ready. "I appreciate the invitation, Chloe, but I'll be hosting my own Thanksgiving this year, with friends. You and Ben would be welcome to join us if you'd like to try something different." Her surprise was evident, a flicker of genuine shock. "You're hosting Thanksgiving?" "Yes," I confirmed, a quiet confidence in my voice. "It won't be as formal as Mom's, but the food will be good, and the company will be warm." Chloe didn't accept my invitation, which didn't surprise me. But the fact that I had extended it, on my own terms, from a place of strength rather than desperate need, felt profoundly significant. My mother's reaction to hearing about our coffee meeting, predictably, came in the form of a lengthy email, alternating between statements like, "I'm glad you girls are finally putting this nonsense behind you," and subtle, passive-aggressive digs like, "I always knew you'd come around eventually when you were ready to be mature about things." In the past, I would have analyzed every word, scrutinizing it for genuine approval, while simultaneously internalizing every cutting criticism, letting it eat away at my self-worth. Now, I simply noted the familiar patterns, the predictable dance, and responded with a brief, detached politeness. "I'm glad Chloe and I had a chance to talk as well. I hope you're doing well." The profound shift in my response to my mother wasn't lost on Liam, who had witnessed some of my earlier, more fraught reactions to family communications. "You used to get so anxious whenever your mom contacted you," he observed one evening as we cooked dinner together, the comforting smells of garlic and herbs filling my new kitchen. "Now you just seem, I don't know, unaffected." I considered this as I chopped vegetables, the rhythmic thud of the knife a soothing backdrop. "Not unaffected exactly," I corrected him, thinking it through. "More like I see her clearly now. I understand her limitations. I know her approval isn't necessary for my happiness, and her disapproval doesn't determine my worth." Liam smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "That's a big change," he said softly. "From the woman I met a year ago who apologized for having opinions about where we should have dinner." He was right. The woman I'd been before the wedding rejection had been so afraid of disapproval, so terrified of conflict, that she'd made herself small, invisible, trying to avoid any ripple in the calm surface of her relationships. The woman I was now understood that healthy disagreement, that asserting one's needs and desires, was part of an authentic relationship, and that true connection required showing up as my full, imperfect self, not a carefully constructed facade. As another holiday season approached, I made good on my plan to host Thanksgiving. Our guest list included Sarah and her wonderful boyfriend, Liam, several new friends from the art collective, 2 former colleagues who had become genuine friends, and a few kind neighbors from my building. Chloe and Ben declined as expected, but to my surprise, they sent a lovely bottle of wine and a handwritten note wishing us a happy holiday. The day itself was chaotic and wonderfully imperfect. Too many cooks in my small kitchen, a turkey that took longer than expected to roast, spirited debates about movies and books, board games that got increasingly competitive as the evening progressed, fueled by good food and plenty of laughter. Looking around at the mismatched chairs and borrowed plates, the diverse group of people who had chosen to spend their holiday together in my humble apartment, I felt a sense of profound completion. This was family, not defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual care and choice. These people saw me, valued me, and wanted me present. Not for what I could do for them, not for a service I could provide, but simply for who I was. The wedding rejection that had once seemed like the ultimate confirmation of my unworthiness had actually been the beginning of my liberation. By walking away from people who couldn't love me properly, who were incapable of genuine, unconditional affection, I had created space. Space for those who could. By releasing the exhausting, lifelong pursuit of conditional approval, I had found the energy to build a life that truly reflected my values and desires. One evening in December, a few weeks after Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to much since before the wedding. She was in town for a conference and wondered if we could meet for coffee. We arranged to meet at my favorite cafe near my apartment. "I heard about what happened at Chloe's wedding," she said, her voice gentle, after we'd exchanged initial pleasantries. "Aunt Evelyn told everyone you had a scheduling conflict, but I figured that wasn't the whole story." I smiled slightly, a small knowing curve of my lips. "No, it wasn't." "You seem good though," she observed, her eyes studying me, a genuine curiosity in her gaze. "Better than I remember seeing you at family gatherings, actually." "I am good," I confirmed, the words ringing with authenticity. It turns out that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself. As I walked home from the cafe that day, the cold Chicago air bracing, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past year. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments of grief for the family relationships I had wanted, had desperately craved, but never truly had. But those moments no longer defined me or determined my choices. I had learned, finally, that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who you choose, and who chooses you in return. I had learned that love shouldn't require constant performance or proving yourself worthy. Most importantly, I had learned that walking away from people who can't see your value isn't giving up. It's an act of profound, radical self-respect. The stranger I had promised to become that day at the wedding reception wasn't really a stranger at all. She was the authentic self I had always been, waiting to emerge, buried beneath layers of people-pleasing and approval-seeking. By walking away from conditional love, I had finally found my way home, to myself. So, I have to ask you, have you ever had to walk away from a relationship that was hurting you, even when society screams, "But they're family"? What was that moment of clarity for you? What did you discover about yourself on the other side? Drop your story in the comments below. Remember that choosing your own well-being isn't selfish. It's necessary. If my story resonated with you, if you found a piece of yourself in my journey, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family you create is more nurturing than the one you were born into.